the cloud. Okay, so welcome this morning to the Global Grants Management Seminar. I'm Rachel Osira, District Rotary Foundation Chair from the Rotary Club of Naperville. And with me, my co-host is past District Governor, our District Grants Subcommittee Chair, Pedro Ceballos, who's with the Rotary Club of Chicago Six Corners. And so this morning, we have our Global Grant Management Seminar for the year 2021-22. So anyone attending today, this qualifies you and your club for training for Rotary year 2021-22. So just wanted you to know that right up front. We are in webinar mode, so participants are muted, and we ask that you go ahead and put your name, your club, and your email in the chat so that we have a record. And if you have any questions as we go along, please put those in the chat. There's also a Q&A section, so if you end up putting it in there, that's fine too. And Pedro, if you would monitor the chat, I mean, we'll both look at it because we'll alternate, talking, but we'll stop at the end of every section and look at questions and see if there's any questions along the way. We don't want to wait until the very end because sometimes, the question really helps enlighten the topic. So we want to be able to answer those. And we are recording, so everyone knows. And we will post this information and make it available on the district website. So I guess with no further ado, or Pedro, is there anything you want to add up front before we get started?
Not really. I'm just looking at the chat right now. There's everybody who's saying hi. No questions so far.
Okay, very good. Good. So everybody's checking in and saying hi, and yeah, we really appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll see a PowerPoint most of the time. Let's see here. Can you see that, Pedro?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go into slideshow. And usually when I have this up, I only have one screen, so I can't see the chat very well. So I will rely on you to, whoops, of course, I have the wrong PowerPoint. Well, that's not a good way to start that. I'm going to stop sharing. And let me try it again and go to the right PowerPoint. Let's see. I'm very sorry. Something happened in my computer and the right PowerPoint went away. So I have to go find it. Okay. All right. I'm going to try to.
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me try to just close that out. There we go. It was hiding the other one. Okay. Let me reshare here. Okay. Are we good?
Global Grants Management Seminar, I think.
Okay.
It's October 16,
yeah,
2021.
All right. There we go. Okay. All right. It was just trying to trick me this morning because I had two PowerPoints open. So we welcome you today, and we just want to take a moment to introduce our District Grants Subcommittee because these folks do a great job and they're a resource to everyone. Pedro, would you like to introduce the members of the committee?
Oh, sure. Of course, we had a hard-working committee, but we have first Sue Lin, who is our District Grants Coordinator, and Bruce George, who is the Global Grants Coordinator. And then we have the members of the clubs. We have her from Chicago, Joanne Raguna from Darien, Tom Norton from Hinsdale, Laura Lass from Juliet, Florence Forshey from LaGrange, Chuck Newman from Naperville, and Iris Saavedra Saldivar from Opal River Forest. And those are the members. And now regarding the positions in that they have. We have Rachel, of course, is the District Rotary Foundation chair. She's my boss. I have Bob Giles in charge of the scholarships, Leslie and Bill Lyman that do the stewardship. In the director-elect Pat Merriweather that comes to most of the meetings and always shares her wisdom with us. We have the District Governor Jane, District Governor-elect Adi, District Governor Dominic Connor, and the District Administrator Ed Graciano. So it's a pretty big committee. So
yeah, and it's important because we want to make sure everyone knows who the folks are, because they're a resource for everyone doing grants. So do reach out to them, and many of them are with us today. Oops. Okay, so our learning objectives today, just we're going to touch on the Rotary Foundation, because without the Rotary Foundation, we don't have global grants. And we just want to make sure everyone understands how the annual fund share system works, which provides the district designated funds and the World Fund monies for global grants. What are the traits of a global grant? What type of activities does it fund? The partnering is really important. So we'll spend some time on, how you find partners, how to design and apply for the global grants, the grant management and stewardship requirements, and also recent changes to the World Fund policy. Nothing new since last spring, but we're gonna, those are still fairly new. So we want to make sure we really emphasize that and what's different. And then our district's DDF policy for global grants. So I'm gonna just go ahead and touch on the upfront stuff about the Rotary Foundation. The Rotary Foundation is about doing good in the world through our life-changing projects, and it's our foundation. It's our foundation, both to give to, so that we can do our service projects both locally and globally, and of course eradicate polio. So the major fund we're going to focus on today is the annual fund, and it's by giving to the annual fund that we're able to fund our global grants. So, and that photo right there, I always like to mention it, that's from one of our own global grant projects here in the Chicagoland area. Oak Park River Forest is doing a project called Bridging the Digital Divide with Kids Express in the Austin community. So yeah, global grants happen right here too. We want to make sure you know that. And our foundation is unique. It's, it's a foundation for Rotarians to do our good work in the world. It literally, it's you're not just sending money somewhere else for other people to do things. You're investing, and then you're engaging the foundation. And this district really does engage the foundation. So thank you for what each of you are already doing and plan to do on grants. So this is the share system. And it's just important to understand, okay, so when we give to the annual fund, those funds are invested for 3 years. And after 3 years, the principal comes back, and half of it currently goes to the district as district designated funds, and half of it goes to the World Fund. There is 5% taken out for administration. So that currently comes out of the part that goes to the World Fund. Starting in 2024, that 5% that gets taken out, actually half will come out of the World Fund and half will come out of the district designated funds, which is fair. The money that comes to the district, the DDF, half of it, that amount can be used in a district grant, and the other half, or whatever isn't also used for district grant, is available for global grants and donations to polio as well. So when we're talking about DDF, district designated funds, as we're going to be doing throughout the morning here, this is where it comes from. It comes from what we gave to the annual fund 3 years ago. And that's what we have, coming in each year. So I'll just stop. And Pedro, are there any questions at this point that you see?
No.
Okay, and we'll keep going. So our areas of focus. So we have 7 now. We used to talk about our 6 areas of focus, but as of July 1st, we now have the environment. So these are the areas that the Rotary Foundation, by our global grants, these are areas that we can work in. Peace and conflict prevention, disease prevention and treatment, which is by far the largest, most frequent area of focus for global grants. Probably second is water, sanitation, and hygiene. Then there's maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, community economic development, and environment. And our district actually has grants in all of the 6 original areas, and we have a grant application going in the 7th area as well. So we're we're really looking at the whole spectrum of opportunities. So Pedro, you want to take this? What are global grants?
Yeah, well, the global grants are the means in which the Rotary Foundation is looking to do the larger and longer term projects, and they have to meet the community needs and align with one or more the areas of services with Rotary. We recommend that they only do one, because if you try to do more than one, then the approval process gets twice as hard. So just align with one area of service, and sustainability is a big deal. You know, in the past, and it's Secretary John Hugo was telling us that in the past there were a lot of projects that would get done, and then there was no way to keep them going, and at the end it was a waste of money and effort. You know, so ever since the global grants were started a few years ago, there's a big issue, a big emphasis in making sure that it's sustainable. Whatever is left after the grant can continue to function. So that's a very big issue, and we have had some when they went through the approval of the grants. That's one of the areas in which we usually have questions, and there has to be also training associated with the outcomes. There's a lot of training, and of course the minimum size of the grant is $30,000. Most of our grants are a little larger than that.
Okay. Right. And then in anything
the
fairly
last one,
new, I've put in green. So yeah, no world.
That's a new requirement that just came last year, in which there is no minimum contribution from the Rotary Foundation. In the past, there was a minimum of $15,000, but when COVID came, they changed all the rules, some of the rules, and so now there is no minimum. So which means that a club can go ahead and put all $30,000 and still get a global grant without matching from the Rotary Foundation.
Right. Thank you, Pedro. And so for global grants, there's basically 3 different types of global grants: humanitarian projects, and the majority of the grants that we do in our district are humanitarian projects, but we also do scholarships. There are global grant scholarships. And in fact, we've been a pretty active district in this. And Pedro, how many global grant scholarships do we have open right now? Maybe 4?
Right now, because Chicago is such a center of higher education, and one of the favorite places for people to study is the University of Chicago. So most of our scholarship grants are in the University of Chicago. We just started a new one this year, and we have closed a couple. So right now we have only one active. So one student that we are co-sponsoring that is in Chicago. So we also co-sponsor some of our students abroad, and we have I think 2 of those going on right now. So.
Right, and these are studies at the master's level or above, and so that's a second area. And the third area or type of global grant is a vocational training team. We haven't had one of those in a long time. maybe since past District Governor Osei's cleft palate team went to Nigeria. But that's a whole nother type of opportunity as well. So we'll get into more. Just a little bit up front here. So the Rotary Foundation for Global Grants requires a partnership between at least 2 different countries. You have the host clubs in different countries, the host sponsor club and the international sponsor club. And the host club is where the project is done, and the international sponsor is a club in any other country. So you can have, there's actually, clubs, and there's actually some districts that span the US and Canada, and they do a global grant within their own district. Sometimes they have a club in Canada and a club in the US that can do a grant together. It's kind of unique. Our district requires the sponsoring club to have at least 2 other district clubs participate in the global grant financially, and 4 other clubs if the district budget is over $100,000. This is a good opportunity to engage other clubs and other Rotarians in the grant process. That was why we started it some years ago, I think, when Nikki was district governor. She brought that in, and it just really helps spread the interest in the grants. So, and then you work with the grant committee to prepare the grant and approve it before the grant is locked and submitted to the Rotary Foundation. So we do require that the grant team come to one of the monthly meetings of the district grant subcommittee. We're currently meeting online, and present that grant to us, and we have to vote to approve it. We have to vote on the DDF, the district designated funds, but we also actually encourage you to engage the district grant committee, well before that. We're open to, brainstorming, bouncing ideas, helping you connect, whatever it is that you need, but starting a dialogue early, I think can be really helpful. And there's a global grant checklist also that you can use as a guide. And Pedro mentioned earlier about sustainability, that this was really a really big focus for the global grant process compared to the old matching grants process, where that wasn't a requirement. And it's built into the grant application. And the whole idea is that you're providing a solution. It's a long-term solution, and you're meeting an underlying community need. It's not something that is temporary or won't last. So there's a lot of aspects to that, starting with the team, engaging the community in a community assessment, local ownership training, buying local funding, and measuring your success. So there's quite a number of steps in that. We're going to take a look before we get into a lot more details about our own grants portfolio, just to show you a few things. And we have a very active portfolio of global grants. We have over 30 approved and open grants at this time, where one of our clubs is the primary sponsor. We participate in even more grants than that financially, but in terms of leading a grant, we have over 30 that we're currently leading. We have a couple that are in the pipeline for review for the Rotary Foundation, and one that's currently seeking authorizations. And we have some more in the draft phase that are being developed. And we have over 20 clubs that are serving as primary sponsors, which is really remarkable. When we've looked at our zone, and I see data on the other districts in the zone, we have one of the largest portfolios of global grants. And I think we have some of the largest percentage of club participation in global grants as well. In some districts, it's just certain clubs that take it on, or it's really managed at the district level. And we took an attitude way back when these rolled out in 2013 or so, and and even before that, I think when Pat Merriweather was district governor, that it was really about engaging clubs and engaging you. And the district is there to facilitate. And sometimes we do a grant as a district, but we're very oriented towards it being the clubs, because I think that's where it's the most meaningful. So that is something that's different about our district. And I think we've got, this is our footprint. This is where we currently are in the world doing grants. Over the years since global grants started, I'm only talking about global grants, not the previous matching grants. We've done, we have 69 global grants that are either approved or completed. So we're quite a lot, and almost $5 million in total funding, with over half of that actually coming from the Rotary Foundation, 24 different countries, and 25 different clubs throughout those years sponsoring. So, and you can see what we did last year, 8 clubs, 15 projects, all the countries that we were involved in. Many were in the water and sanitation area, basic education and literacy with our simple schools, and disease prevention and treatment. And last year we completed 8 projects. It's important to complete them as well. So that's a snapshot of our footprint. Pedro.
Yeah, there is a question, Rachel,
Okay,
from
great,
Isabel.
yeah.
And they say, is it typically viewed positively if clubs focus on a few geographic regions or many? So they're saying just targeted or as wide. And the second part is, have clubs launched grants in several areas on the one focus area on the one grant? And I think it means in several areas of the one grant. So,
You wanna answer?
Yeah, basically my experience, because I have done a lot of grants. I think it helps to be targeted into one geographical area, because you have to get to know the people. And see, and it is knowing your partner. So I think it's hard to be in different places. In our for example, in our club, in our district, we have focused with projects in Honduras. We have done many projects in Honduras, different clubs working in Honduras in different projects. Or you have the example of the Rotary Club of Chicago, in which they have done a lot of projects in Bolivia. I think the club just targeted. And other clubs have focused into India. Other clubs have focused into Africa. So I think it's in order to develop a good relation with the host clubs, I think staying in one or two geographical areas, I think it's easier to do that. Now, the second part of the question, Isabel, that you can do grants in several areas. I think that is difficult, because you can only have one host club in the grant. So it's plus also the amount of money that you will need to do to replicate a project from one area to the other. I think that will be a little difficult.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Isabel says, I agree. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a very practical question. And sometimes it's relationships, sometimes it's professional interests that get you going or get you started in a particular country or area of focus. But one of the things we talked about last year when we did this webinar was that we want people to kind of look at things not just as a project, but as a program. It might be multiple projects where you're really involved in a community. You've done the work to assess the community with your partner and understand from the members of the community what the needs are. And as you go along, you'll do a project, but then there'll be other needs that you'll want to address. And sometimes it'll be through a global grant, but other times it just, might be, just a simple club project or, some other way of doing that. And I think it's very rewarding. And that's when you'll actually see that you'll really make a difference. Okay, my cursor sometimes I have trouble finding it, and that's why the slides change so I can get my cursor back. So I apologize, Pedro.
Okay.
So we've got a couple of projects that we want to highlight, and I think, do we have Bruce George here today? Is Bruce on here? Let me see if he is. Bruce, I'm gonna let you talk, and we've got the first water tank project here, Guatemala, with Naperville Sunrise featured. If you want to just walk us through it briefly, just to give people an example of a completed project. And I've got the pictures that you've seen before as well.
Great. I assume everybody can hear me.
Yes.
So, yeah, so our club found this project through one of the members in the club had done an outreach project with their church, I believe, down in Guatemala, and they found a community that was pretty much surviving off of a dump, and where they would basically pull items from the dump and sell them for sustenance and just living. And they had a severe water problem there, where the local government did have pipes run and water into the area, but they were only turning the pipes on, or the water on, 1 hour a day for the entire community. And so you would get people going down and filling up their buckets of water and taking them home and for that 1 hour, and they just didn't have enough water. So our project basically identifies families that are in need, or areas that are in need. And we build water tanks that can be hooked up to the system. So when they do run the water for that hour a day, they get their full till of water, and it ends up filling up the tank over time. The first grant that we put through, and I'm probably going to get the numbers wrong, but I think we had somewhere around $40,000 that got raised and was matched for a total of that $40,000. What you're looking at right now is these tanks, and they're elevated above in the air, so they can get some water pressure through them too. And they're assigned to families, but they have local people and friends that live around them that utilize the tanks too. It also came with a training program on hygiene. That one of the issues when submitting for a grant like this, when you're trying to improve the work or the living conditions, is one of education too. So not only do we provide the tanks here, we provided seminars that taught the locals about just general hygiene and bacteria and water, and how to clean your hands and sterilize pots and pans and such. And that's an interesting thing when you're putting together grants. If you have any types of programs that involve education and training, the Rotary Foundation wants to have a lot of information on what those training sessions are. So they have separate reports that you have to, or not reports, but separate forms that you actually fill out to lay out the exact seminar that's going to be happening. And they're pretty serious about the education aspect of it too. So know that if you have anything with any training or education, that there are separate forms that have to be filled out. You not only have to let them know exactly what's happening in the training session, but you have to have qualified people that are teaching the sessions too. It was a great program. We finished up with 30 some tanks in the initial stage. We applied for a second grant and went through, and we got another 28 tanks that are being constructed right now. So it's been a fantastic program for us. You can see the pictures. It's a lot of satisfaction there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bruce. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that was and by you telling that story, I mean, you brought out a lot of the aspects that we want to convey today about where did the idea come from? How did you find a partner? Learning about the community, making sure that education was provided, and you have to include all of that information in the grant application. And we'll get into, really detailed slides about that stuff, but we want to bring it to you first a little bit through, just talking through a grant that was done, and then going back and, seeing what the outcomes were, and providing a process for maintaining the systems. And then, yes, it was successful. There's more to be done, and you're back doing it again. Exactly what we were talking about with that excellent question that was asked earlier about, focusing. How do you focus? Do you stay in a certain country? Pedro?
Yeah, there is a question for Bruce,
Okay.
from Richard Ziegler, about how do you plan for sustainability for a program like this?
Well, that is actually part of the reporting and part of the grant approval process to provide that information. In this case, what they have is there is a slight fee that has to be paid for the chemicals that are put into the system. They do have, our local organization does go back to the individual tanks every probably 6 months. They go out there and they review the tanks to make sure that they are in place and keeping clean and such. The sustainability, the water has never been the issue here. It's just the way that the government provides it. So that's really hasn't been a sustainability issue for this particular project that we have. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that helps. And as Bruce said, when you go through the grant application, there's something called the six steps to sustainability that are built into the grant application. And we'll go through that in more detail in a little while, but it really forces you to think through all of that. And we won't go into as much detail, but we had Kankakee Water and Sanitation grant that was just recently closed out in Mexico, providing toilets in a very poor and rural area. Julia Mulliken from the Rotary Club of Kankakee, she had known people and had been visiting in that area for a while. And so, was able to put this project together. Let's see. And this just shows installation of the tanks where the sewage was treated, and the new sanitation facilities that went in. Makes a big difference. And I just would say that, again, this is a project that's been part of a program. And there's a lot more going on. The relationship, with the local club down there and the community by the Rotary Club of Kankakee. They have health fairs. They have a lot of a community engagement that's ongoing. So, someday there may be another global grant that comes out of it, but the club is really active with the local club, and Los Mochis, I think is where it is.
Mochis, yep.
Mochis. And so they're doing a lot of other things as well to benefit the community. We'll do one here on disease prevention and treatment. Pedro, you were with Rotary One at the time that this
Yes.
FASO project was done. If you want to give us an overview.
Yeah, this one that was sending medical equipment. There was one container of medical equipment that was sent with the collaboration of Project Cure. Yeah, it was one of the first projects that we did with Project Cure, sending containers of medical just equipment, and also and also medicines and medications that are required. This one is a similar project. This one was done in Mexico with the Guadalajara International Club. And
Okay, yeah.
this one we are actually with the Dr. Babs Wallman and I. We were delivering the equipment in Mexico. You know.
Oops.
This is in Mexico.
Okay.
That was in one of the places that we delivered the equipment in Teocaltiche. In the other picture that you had, that's the Burkina Faso.
Yeah, and they're all Project Cure was the partner, but we
that was
two
not part
countries.
of Project Cure. You can see the type of equipment that a container of equipment. They say that it has a retail value of about $500,000 in equipment, and it's all donated. So it has to be is the transportation with really the logistics to get it into the country. The Burkina Faso project, because Burkina Faso is landlocked, it had to go all the way to the Indic Ocean, and then it has to go. That had to be transportation by ground transportation. So it was very interesting,
Yeah.
And we have also done similar projects in Haiti. Also the
Mhm.
Rotary Club of Chicago and Dr. Wallman has a clinic in Haiti and in Dominican Republic. So
Right.
they all are similar projects in which equipment is delivered to areas of that really
Yeah,
need
and
it.
we've done in Nigeria as well, and working with a couple of different organizations like Project Cure, Hospital Sisters Mission Outreach that collect unused medical supplies or supplies that are or equipment that's being retired and refurbishing it. But it's never junk. Anything that's sent through Project Cure or Hospital Sisters Mission Outreach or others are any supplies are still valid and within their use period, or if it's equipment, it's all been tested and refurbished so that
It's
it's
all
workable.
the majority of the equipment
Yeah.
is refurbished. Some equipment is new
Mhm.
because
True.
what we consider obsolete here in the United States is considered technology.
Yeah.
Newest technology in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that's been a big focus. And again, sustainability is very important with that. Can the equipment be maintained? Can the spare parts be provided? Do clinicians know how to use it? So there's a lot of training aspect to those projects as well.
there's
Really
one
important.
aspect with Project Cure will go and do an inspection of the place just to make
Right.
sure that there is water, there is power, because a lot of this equipment requires power. And there is no power.
Yeah. Right. And in some of the countries, the power supply isn't, there's no public power supply. And so making sure that the hospitals have sufficient generator capacity to do that. It really, the environment is unique in each application. Similar projects have been done in Sierra Leone as well through the Homewood Club. So it's a really, really big area of focus. And we'll keep moving along here. This was the Rotary Club in Naperville. We've established a relationship with a club in Hyderabad, India, the Hyderabad Deccan Club. We've done a number of projects with them. Again, it's a focus and it's a relationship. And one of them was to provide a mobile blood bank van that went around in Hyderabad to collect blood. So there's blood is in constant demand for all the reasons you would expect, plus a condition called thalassemia, a type of anemia. And there was a Rotary blood bank in Hyderabad, but with the traffic and such, in the way people worked, high rises and that, it was hard to get to the blood bank. So this project created a pristine mobile blood van that was able to go to a workplace or a place where a lot of people were and be there for a period of time, say all day, and people would sign up and give blood. So it's been really successful. I think there were 3 or 4 beds in the van that collected. We're not going to play the video, but there was a video of it that collected the blood. And in fact, the project was so successful, and they have to meet absolutely rigid standards, follow the local standards in India for a blood bank. This is all, has to be done through registered with the regulatory agencies that oversee the collection of blood. But it was so successful that the partner in India was able to work with our club, the Rotary Club of Naperville, and also a club in Nigeria, to do a blood bank, not a mobile bank, blood van, but a blood bank there outside of Lagos in Nigeria, a project there that's currently underway. And we've never been able to do a Rotary blood bank in Nigeria before. So, but with the credentials of this partner and, being able to demonstrate what we're able to do in the past, we're able to get approved to do that. So, and I'll turn this back over to you, Pedro. This is our last snapshot looking at grants that we've been doing before we actually dive more into the
okay. Yeah,
material.
this is,
And when Pedro was governor, and I got to say this, he was passionate about local global grants. In fact, we called them reverse grants until we were told not to do that. But it actually attracted attention. And, really trying to convey that we can do them here and forming partnerships. And you were very successful, Pedro. Over to you.
Yeah, well, that we were lucky that we got some wonderful partners. And so we have that 2 of these 4 projects are practically completed. And the MC school, that's a project of the Chicago Southeast that is still, because there is a lot of contribution from youth, it has been a little delay because of COVID, but it's starting to move now. And the bridge, the digital divide, you already showed that pictures of that earlier in the presentation. That's Opal River Forest, with a partner in Bolivia. I forgot to say that the Chicago Southeast had a partner from Nigeria. The sensory gym, the therapeutical sensory gym in the southeast side of Chicago, that's Chicago 6 Corners and Guadalajara International. That gym is completed and it's operational, and it's being used as a model now for a similar one that's going to be built in Mexico. Mm-hmm. So there you have you have a picture of that. That is in the southeast side of Chicago, in an area that is pretty neglected, So that was it's great that we were able to put something there. And the last, it's a project that we did a couple of years ago when the pandemic started, and in which there were so many clubs. There were like 30 clubs that participated.
Yeah, I think 35 clubs.
It was a real success in which we were able to secure a large number of iPads, computers, to then give it to either to hospitals or to nursing homes for them to be able to communicate. You remember at the beginning of the pandemic, there was people who couldn't talk to each other, and so it was very well received, and it did a tremendous job. And I think it was written in the Rotarian magazine, this project, about with the impact that it had. So there is 39 clubs and 4 districts, and we were able to get partners from Japan to be our international partner for this project. So it was a great experience, especially to see so many clubs that jump and participated. So I don't think that we have had that record number of clubs. Most of those were in the district. 1 or 2 were from outside the district, but most were clubs in the district that participated.
Right. Yeah, and we had some participation from the District 6440 to the north. So yeah, that was really great.
That was a great example to see how we came together and did this record time. In using a couple of months, we got this done. which is unheard.
Yeah, very quickly. And the rule changes were happening at the same time too, but somehow we kept it going. Oh gosh, what was I gonna say? Oh, and so also, one of the participants in the project, Pat Merriweather, in fact, she was the primary sponsor, the primary contact for the host sponsor, was very active in a statewide committee on the impact of COVID-19 on nursing homes. And there was a big success at last May where the Illinois State Legislature unanimously passed legislation to require these types of devices to be in nursing homes for communication, be available to residents. So it's, there have been some really good outcomes. Well, we're going to go ahead. And these are just some more pictures of the clubs. So the clubs, because there were so many clubs involved, when the iPads came in, the members of the clubs who were sponsoring certain nursing homes or safety net hospitals were actually the ones who went and delivered the iPads and talked to the administrators about the program. So these are some of the photos we have of those iPads going out.
Yeah.
And
Before we close this topic, I think that doing projects in our community it gives us a lot of exposure, and I will encourage clubs to do that. And if you need to look for international partners to do it, please talk to us in our grant subcommittee, because we had the connections internationally who can match you with an international partner. And I think that we should continue to do these projects here in the Chicagoland area.
Absolutely. And that actually helps, more of our club members. It's real important that we donate to the annual fund, because we don't donate to the annual fund, we don't have the funds to do global grants. But helping communicate to our club members that global grants are global, because they involve people from different countries working together, and they can certainly happen here in our community. We have needs as well. So, well, we're going to go ahead and after looking at these wonderful examples of things that we've done in our district that help, really illustrate the process and the outcomes from beginning to end, we're going to now get more academic and dive into the process itself. How do we request a global grant? How much can we get? How can we use the grant? When is it due? How do we get approval? What do you do when you get the money? And the reporting and the record keeping and all of these are really important. So it all begins with the club application process. The club has to be qualified. And so by you attending this seminar today, your club becomes qualified for training. There's, and we'll get more into those details, but the first thing is to become qualified. You can't do it if you're not qualified. And you complete the application. It's online. It's online in My Rotary, in the Grant Center. It's in there. Just log into My Rotary, click on Take Action, and you'll get some menu choices. And one of them will be Start a Global Grant Application. And you just go right into it, and it's a web form. And it really leads you through everything we're gonna talk about here in that web form. The district, when you're ready, the district approves the district designated funds, or the DDF, that go into the grant, and we authorize it online. And once it's authorized online by the clubs that are involved and by the districts that are involved, it's then submitted to the Rotary Foundation for approval and a review. They almost always come back with questions. That's very normal. And the process can take a while to get through that. But the more work you do on your application and the more thorough it is, the faster the review process goes. And then ultimately, once it's approved, the two sponsor clubs are notified the approval status, and then the implementation begins. So getting started. So again, we're back to qualification. The district confirms that the clubs are qualified. I guess we basically already said this. We approve the application in the DDF by the district grant committee. We have our own DDF policy, which we'll review in a few minutes. And the clubs are expected to contribute toward the project funding. So when you're working on a global grant, your club is expected to contribute toward that project funding. So we start with getting qualified. So the first thing is attending the Global Grant Management Seminar annually. So anyone, it could be anyone, it's just one person is required, but we actually recommend that the grant teams do it together. Attend a Global Grant Management Seminar for that Rotary year. So we offer one in the spring. So we offered one in April. That was for this Rotary year. And any clubs that have an open grant or a grant that's been application that's been submitted or are working on a grant need to do this. This session here today also is for this current Rotary year. So there's if your club hadn't already done this by you being here today, your club is now qualified on training. The other part is the MOU, and Pedro, I'll go to you for the MOU.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks.
And we've got Bruce on here too. So
Bruce, yeah. So, but Bruce is the person in the committee that is in charge of checking that everybody completes the MOUs. So he gave me a list of we've got 6 clubs that have grants that have not completed the MOU, and I will connect with them. So that's, well, there are Little Village, 6 Corners, Southeast, Joliet, Oakland, and Yonkers. We need to get those MOUs. I think that most of them have representatives today here. So please complete that MOU at your earliest convenience and send it to Bruce George so that he can check you in the list.
Yeah, it might feel like we're asking you for that all the time, but we have to have it done every year. And it's absolutely critical that we have an MOU, a club memorandum of understanding on file from any club that has an open or submitted or draft global grant. And it basically, it has to be signed by the club president and the president-elect. And it basically says, we're managing the money properly, and we're following all the rules for a global grant. This is our responsibility to the Rotary Foundation. These funds and the grant process is coming from the Rotary Foundation. So we absolutely have to have these memorandums of understanding on file. And if we're audited by the Rotary Foundation, and they do randomly audit districts every year, this is the first thing they look for. They want to make sure that any club or district that has a global grant that they're qualified, because if you're qualified, you're going to do it right. And things do go wrong sometimes, most of the time accidentally, but there have been occasions, not in our district, but I'm just saying in the world where it's not properly done, and it's super important. So the qualification, it's valid for a year. The club's responsible for the grant funds. You're required to disclose any conflicts of interest, cooperate with all audits, use the funds properly, implement the club qualification MOU, which says basically you're going to responsibly manage the accounts, keep records, that all of that is, and it's going to be, the records will be available for 5 years after the grant is closed. And you need to be current on your district and Rotary International dues, and submit goals for the Rotary Foundation giving for the club and for membership. That's important that you do that. Otherwise, the source of funds will exhaust. So conflict of interest exists when a Rotarian benefits financially or personally from a grant, or it might be indirect or are direct. And if there's anyone on the grant team that has a conflict of interest, it just has to be disclosed. Usually Rotary will ask that that person not be on the grant team. Just because there's a conflict of interest doesn't mean anything is wrong, but it just has to be disclosed, and they might ask that that person not be on the team. So that just bear that in mind. And then maintaining the qualifications. So you want to follow all the terms on the club qualification memorandum. Probably good if you're a club that, you know, is involved in global grants regularly, to have someone in your club who's really watching out for this process and making sure that you're qualified. We watch it from the district side, but it's good to have someone in your club watching it as well, and make sure you have good stewardship practices in place to prevent the misuse of funds and to facilitate reports. We'll talk about reporting in a little while, and there's an annual report due, and it's due on time. And if they're not on time, we can be suspended as a district from doing grants. So we don't want that to happen. So there's these things that are necessary. So and without that, we wouldn't have a robust process that would allow us to keep doing grants. So it's just important that we have all those things in place. Another real important thing is finding partners. And Pedro, if you want to lead us through this, because you are, Pedro is really wonderful at finding partners with his international background, and I think with his vocation, being in basically the project business for many years, and in his interest in doing that. It just seems to come
Well,
naturally.
the requirement is that the partner has to be from a different country. So there are one of the ways in which we Rotarians get to know people from other places in the world is by attending the international conference. That is the principal source where you can meet people from other places. Now, more recently, a lot of countries have been doing project fairs, and in the last couple of years, the project fairs have been online. So that is one way, because you have to connect personally with the people. So we get requests in the mail all the time. We get emails in some of the clubs in the District 6450 from all over the world. But you really have to know your partner. Otherwise there is doing the global grant will be kind of complicated. So here's Rachel had put a list of ideas. It's the different places where we can find partners. They have the Rotary Showcase, the different grant discussion groups, action groups. We talk a little bit about the project fairs and some other tools like the matchinggrants.org that is designed specifically looking for partners. And then you have the other things like the youth exchanges and I think because of our location in close to Evanston, we get a lot of Rotarian visitors that come to Chicago, and they sometimes show up in some of our clubs in order to do the required meeting attendance, and we used to get, at least in Chicago, we used to get a lot of visitors. Almost every week we get somebody from a different country, and so that's an area. The other is there are church groups that are working internationally, and there are you can, even in our district conference, when you get together with Rotarians of other clubs in the district, you can talk about it and find out that they are doing work in some place already. And I think the best way, if you haven't done an international project, is perhaps to start working with a club that has more experience. We have some clubs in the district that do a lot of grants. They start working with one of those clubs and have learn this, the fundamentals, and then you can venture and do your own but yeah, I think that having a personal connection with the person from the other club is really important, and I cannot overstress the also to going to the international conference, and you know, the district governors have to go to a training every year, in which they meet with all the district governors from that year, and so the district governors have a lot of connections with the peers that they have developed to those meetings, so that the past district governors are a good source of international connections.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've got some information here on the, trying to advance the slides here on the project fair, some of the project fairs this year that are coming up, and they're all online, so anyone can go. Technically speaking, here's some pictures from past project fairs that were in person.
Mhm.
But we've got, let's see, which one is this? This is the World Project Fair, and it's actually sponsored. It's the third year doing it. It's sponsored out of the Rotary Club of Brownsville Sunrise, with some districts in zone 25 and 29. And they are, this link is actually a real live link, and we'll make this information available to those who are interested. We'll send, well, this is a huge presentation, but we always have a link to it that's available, but we can also send these links out. Maybe the district grant committee can, well, we'll send it to all the attendees here. The World Project Fair is coming up.
Zone 29 is our sister zone. So I'm sorry,
Yeah.
zone 25.
Right.
Zone 25 is our sister zone, and it covers from Mexico all the way to Colombia. So
right, yeah. So so this is one of the busiest areas in the Rotary world for actually grant projects is in that area. So this is a neat opportunity. And you have to register, and you know, just might be a way to start to get some ideas and see some connections. And Pedro, this is a fair that you've attended for many years, the Ecuador fair. You want to say anything about that?
We have what projects? We have done projects with them out of this. You know, again, this year is online, but in the past we have attended in person, and then taken side trips either to the Galapagos Islands or to the Amazon or to the mountains. So it's a good way to get to know, and usually Rotarians kind of subsidize a little bit. So you want to do a sightseeing tour, they will get a really good rate, and they will give you some additional attention. So it's a good way. It's better than going a tour by yourself, you know.
And Betsy just put a comment in the chat that Bolivia and Argentina are planning a project fair in February. So we'll keep our eye open for that as well, and send those links out or post them on the district website in the grant section when those are available too.
Yes, and this is, yeah, it's going to be a nice, it's going to be in Argentina, actually, in Buenos Aires, the project fair.
Okay,
so there will
great.
be a nice opportunity to go to that place in the world. Actually, Betsy, who put that question, she came to Ecuador. We went there to the project fair.
Okay, well, that might have been a spark too for Betsy. Because Betsy's involved with, I want to say 5 or so global grants right now.
Yeah, in Bolivia.
Yeah. And there's one more here that we're featuring today, because these are just right around the corner on the calendar. The West Africa Project Fair is online this year. They're doing it virtually, and that's in November 4th through 6th. And there's the link there. And again, we'll make that information available, these links, so that clubs and Rotarians can participate if they'd like to. So now I'll dive actually into the global grant application. And as I mentioned earlier, they're submitted online at rotary.org/grants, which is in my Rotary under the Take Action section of the homepage menu. There are no deadlines. Yay. There are no deadlines for global grant applications. There's new funding that becomes available every year. So in some ways that can be like a deadline, but actually you can start and submit really anytime, which is really great. So our committee, the district grant subcommittee, meets every month. So we never take a month off. We always meet because we know that people want to come forward with applications or questions. So we make sure that we're available. There is a limit on the number of grants that any one club can sponsor at any time, and it's 10. So you can't have more than 10 active grants, approved grants at any one time. And that really hasn't been much of a practical issue. That's kind of a natural limitation anyway as to what kind of a span of control that any organization can manage. So it's not really been an issue. And as I mentioned earlier, both clubs and districts can serve as host or international sponsors on a global grant. So it can be a club, it can be a district, it can be a combination of the two, whatever really works. Our emphasis here has been, really trying to engage clubs, but from time to time we do a project as a district, like we did the iPads project. That made sense to do it as a district for a number of reasons. So, but our preferred model here is for clubs. And we start with the community needs assessment. So we're going to start to go through a step process. And these might be things that we've mentioned earlier, but we'll just reinforce them again. So that's identifying, what the needs are in the community, and then making sure through your project that you're building a sustainable solution and that it aligns with the values and the culture in the community. So every global grant application must have the community assessment results attached. You don't have to attach the actual assessment, but there's a form, kind of a checklist form that walks through questions as a result of the community assessment. They're actually very practical. It really helps you think through your grant application and build in that sustainability and really make sure that you're seeing things through the eyes of the community itself. And a real important step, and you don't want to rush through this, is engaging the community in the assessment process. There's a lot of different ways of doing that, but you really want to take the time to do that. It's usually led by the host club, but certainly encourage international partners to be involved as well. And take the time to make sure you listen to voices that are sometimes marginalized, voices that aren't heard or brought in, because that makes all the difference in really understanding what the need is and identifying a solution that will work. And we're not there to do what we think should be done, but to really understand what the community needs and implement a solution that they will that they will sustain, that they will value, and works for them. So it's really that combination. And of course, by doing that, you really build trust, you build partnerships. By doing a really good community assessment, you'll find new partners for your project, and you'll have engaged those community members up front, which makes all the difference in how successful the project is, and that it does the good that we intend it to do. So it's all about the relationships, the trust, and really understanding what's going on. Pedro, anything you want to add to that?
No, not really. I was just actually checking the chat, and there was a question from Richard Ziegler.
Okay.
There is East Africa or All Africa Project Fair, and I really don't know The only one that I know is the West Africa fair. Do you know if there are any more?
I don't know.
If they do, they haven't really advertised anything else other than.
We haven't seen anything advertised. I've just made a note to myself and I'll look into it. And if we find something, we'll share that information as
Yeah.
well.
West
There's a lot
Africa.
of projects in Kenya and some in Uganda, but I'm not sure if there's a fair that's put on.
Yeah, I haven't heard. I know that the Rotary International has been pushing this West Africa fair.
Yeah.
Because I've been getting a lot of information about it, but nothing
Okay.
else.
Well, if anyone else on here gets any information about any project fairs, please share them with Pedro or I or anyone on the grants committee, and we'll find a way to share that out to the broader global grant projects community in the district so that people can tap in.
Okay.
Sometimes you'll find those on the Rotary website. They're featured, sometimes on the homepage, or there'll be a place.
Yeah, but I haven't really seen anything.
Okay. Whoops. Let's see. Okay, and then just a little bit more on community assessments. And there's a really great Rotary document that can help you, plan the process, but community meetings, interviews, focus groups, community mapping, just depending on what you're doing, surveys, all kinds of different tools can be used. And then the project has to align with an area of focus. And you can pick more than one, but as Pedro said earlier, don't. On the grant application, please only pick one area of focus. Try to pick the one that is the most central to the project. If you pick more than one, you'll have to provide goals across all the areas of focus that you select, and it really complicates the project, and it doesn't really help the project be a better project. So we just think for simplicity, please just pick one. And if you have any trouble with thinking through that, which one should I pick, just reach out to us and we'll try to give our best advice. And there's some really good document called the Area Focus Policy Statements that are available on the in the Grant Center in my Rotary. We also have them on the district website. That just a lot of detailed information about each area of focus and what types of projects are eligible, what type of information is needed, and what types of projects are not eligible. They can be very specific, and they'll spell that out. And that'll actually help you think through what area of focus your project might be if there's several that are possible. Okay. And then the detailed project plan, well, it starts with forming a 3-person grant committee. Pedro, you want to talk about that?
Well, there's the reason for having several people is that they can be back up one to each other, and also they can distribute the different assignments that they need to do, and that's I think the most crucial part of preparing the grant, because this is the group of people that are going to wind up writing the grant and then being the administrators of the grant and taking responsibility for the financial aspects, because Rotary is very careful about is checking that the money is wisely spent. And this group of people are the ones that are going to be filling the reports and they keeping the receipts and making sure that everything is done correctly. So make sure that you get some people that you can count on in this group, because they're going to be working a grant. Typically, the span of a grant usually is 3 to 4 years. So it's quite a bit of time that you have to work together. But this is where you have to describe what you are going to do and how you are going to do it.
Okay. Let's see here. And thank you, Pedro. Exactly. It is a team. There is one person who is the primary contact, who is the one who goes into the grant application itself, but it is a team. And you can have more than 3 members, but you have to have at least 3. So Rotarian involvement, so it is critical, and it means more than just financial participation between the 2 sponsor clubs. It means using each other's expertise to implement the project, making sure every member is engaged and they've got tasks and roles for each of the Rotarians. And when you do that, it makes it a better project, and it makes it really special for all of the team members. It shouldn't just be kind of a one-person show and this is that person's interest. It's really meant to be a team process with all the Rotarians engaged together. And then, of course, you'll put together a budget. Pedro, you want to take this one?
The budget, yeah. Well, the most important thing, from my experience in the budget, especially if you are working outside the United States, is that the currencies fluctuate and change from time to time. So getting a good estimate of how much it's going to cost to deliver the equipment or to pay professionals in the country is important to have a really good number, and you can do it in local currency, but or you can do it in US dollars, so the US dollars is a little more stable than some of the currencies especially in some of the smaller countries that we work in. But the budget has to be matched with the donations, to the penny. So it's very, very good that you select the vendors carefully. It's good to have 3 quotes sometimes, especially if it is a large piece of equipment or a large project item. It's good to have more than one vendor, so you can show that you are looking at the best use of the dollars in the grant. And again, it comes to the conflicts of interest, and if you are working in outside of the United States, having a contingency plan is really important, because we have had a few occasions in which grants have been canceled, and the money that comes back to the Rotary Foundation is whatever is the current change in the exchange rate, and we went out losing money in a couple of projects because of that, with not having a good contingency or not having everything quoted in dollars, So this is key that you have a good partner. That's where your local partner comes into the picture, because these are the ones that are going to be doing this work, buying the equipment overseas. So anyway, if you have questions on this, we have experience in the committee, and then you could we could work in a case-by-case basis. Really depends on the country, depends on the project.
Right, very, very much. And the more detail you have, the more competitive bids and just research, that you've done, the better. And for sustainability reasons and for other reasons, you want to buy local as much as possible. Okay, and you can see there the actual application form itself, and it's it's a web form, and you fill it in. There's a place where you can upload documents, so you'll be able to upload your bids, any spreadsheets and any useful information that backs up your budget and underpins.
Keep records, keep copy of all the records, all the bids that you get.
Yeah, and
Because-
you'll be able to, you can't see those information in the web form itself, but there's a place where you upload them and you can, anyone who goes into the grant application can see any of those files. Okay. So then we get to funding. So after the budget, you know what the project will cost. And you can include up to 10% contingency as well on top. Then we have to make sure that we can fund it. And so we've had some changes in the funding rules, the funding model the last 2 years. And so this is the funding model that's in place for this year. And we just have to step back and take a look and say, well, why has the funding model changed? Well, the Global Grant Program has been enormously successful. It launched in 2013, and the growth has been amazing. That's good news. It's great. In fact, last year, a record amount of global grants were approved by the Rotary Foundation. The partnership, the opportunity to engage in partnerships, clubs in different parts of the world, to work with communities to solve important issues and provide the opportunity for a better life. It's just been a great success. So that's all good news. But the annual fund donations, which actually fund the World Fund and provide the district designated funds, have not increased at the same pace. So the spending curve was going up much faster than the income curve. And so it just was not sustainable in the old form originally, which provided some matching for cash contributions, as well as matching for district designated funds. So there were changes made to that. And there's also been a huge response for COVID-19. The foundation made it possible for global grants to be done for COVID-19 that didn't require, they were just really fast tracked through the system and didn't require the international partners to put in any funds. And over $32 million, $33 million was awarded since that first started, which is huge and has helped us as Rotarians respond to needs in our communities and in communities around the world. It's absolutely made an impact. But because of the grants being so popular, and the approval of grants outpacing the income that was coming in, we've actually for 2 years in a row had the World Fund run out of money in late May, and the approval of grants had to stop. It happened in 2019, 2020 year, and it happened again this past May. So in both occasions, some changes were made to the funding model by the Rotary Foundation trustees, really trying to make the program sustainable into the future. So we will go through those, and this is what we were talking about. The upper curve here is the annual fund contributions. We had a peak year in 2016-17. That was the 100th anniversary of the Rotary Foundation. It doesn't have this last year on there because it's not audited, but actually we had our highest giving year, the year that just finished at the end of June, in terms of annual fund contributions. So we got had a very good year there. But but still the curve, the blue curve, the global grants was even a steeper increase. So you see when you look at that we needed to change the funding model. So these are the policy changes that were put into effect July 1st. So this is what we're working with. So the DDF contributions to Polio Plus used to be matched 100% by the World Fund, and now are only matched 50%. Now this has no impact on the global grant work that we're doing, but we do want to mention it because it does affect the amount of DDF, World Fund that's available for the global grant program. The World Fund match on district designated funds was reduced from 100% to 80% for global grants. That was the major change that was made affecting the global grant program this year, starting July 1st. It used to be 100% match, but now it's 80%, which now requires therefore more cash to fund a project of the same budget, or it just would reduce the budget of a project, whatever makes the most sense. And then, as I mentioned earlier, starting in 2024, the 5% of the annual fund that goes toward helping defray operating expenses that used to come completely out of the 50% that went to the World Fund, now it will be taken equally from the portion that goes to the World Fund and the portion that comes back to the district. And that will affect the amount of DDF that we get starting in 2024. So, but it's fair. And then there's been an issue with some districts around the world, certainly not ours, of not spending down their DDF. Every year we get new district designated funds that come to the district that are half of what the district clubs gave to the annual fund 3 years before. We've been very good in our district. We have felt that, our members donated so that we would put the funds to use. And through our global grant program and our district grant program and a few other things, we have every year through a proper process, engaging clubs and using our committees, spent down our district designated funds. But around the world, there are districts sitting on millions of dollars of district designated funds. And the Rotary Foundation has pleaded with districts. They can't force, they hadn't forced before, but to invest, to spend, to engage and spend those sums down. And for a number of reasons, it hasn't happened to the degree that it has needed to happen in order to sustain the programming. So starting in 2026, any DDF that's 5 years old will be forced out. And so the DDF will age. They're starting to age the DDF based on the year that it came in. And if you've had that dollar for more than 5 years and you haven't spent it in that fifth year, which will start in 2026, it'll automatically be donated to something, and the district can choose. And if they don't choose, it'll go to the World Fund. That won't affect our district. It shouldn't affect our district. We're very, very current with using our funds and, really trying to engage our members in using those funds. But just want to let you know that that's going on. And that should actually help, create more opportunities for partnerships for global grants going forward with international partners. These funds are mostly held by districts in India, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, for the most part. I think that's where the bulk of it is. And this is just the financial impact of those changes. Altogether, it makes about a $20 million impact, including a year ago when they stopped matching cash contributions to global grants at 50%. So the Rotary Fund, so we needed that background to talk about what the policy is for funding. So grant sponsors can use any combination of district designated funds, cash or directed gifts or endowment earnings. The minimum project budget is $30,000. The World Fund matches district designated funds by 80%. There is no World Fund match for cash, and that 80% went into effect July 1st. So that's basically where we are going forward. Now and into the future. People always ask, well, is that going to change? Are they going to bring it back to where it was? And I've listened to some of the foundation trustees talk about that and answer that question. And I would, you can't ever say never, but under, the horizons that we're looking at, there in the next 5 years or so, there's a very low likelihood that would change. These are the planning parameters that we should consider. And in fact, there could be further changes if we're not able to get income from the annual fund at the rate that we use it in global grants. They trying everything we can not to run out of funds before the grant year is over. It's very unlikely that these matches will go back to the previous level anytime in the next 5 years. There is no minimum World Fund match, as Pedro mentioned earlier. There used to be a $15,000 minimum, but for all of these reasons and all of these changes, that just didn't make any sense anymore, and that was eliminated. The maximum World Fund award is $400,000. That hasn't changed. And the international sponsors have to provide at least 15% of the total sponsor funding. It used to be 30%, but now it's 15%, which makes it a lot easier to do local projects here. It makes the collaboration just a lot easier where you can team up better. So we have so that's the policy, the funding policy from the Rotary Foundation. Every year as a district, we set a policy around our district designated funds. Last year, we had to do something unusual. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But this year we have more of our traditional approach to DDF funding for global grants. So as we said earlier, the sponsor club must have at least 2 other district clubs participate in the grant financially for if the budget's over $100,000. We will match club cash in the range of $6,000 to $7,500. So that's the maximum match, and it's a match. So the club cash has to be at least at that level. So our maximum match is $6,000 to $7,500. And I can't see what this says because my screen is covering up. But anyway, Pedro, can you read that next line?
Yeah, maximum DDF matching range from 6,000 to 7,500. And then sponsor club and district 6450 collaborating club cash is matched up to 6,000. Additional district 6450 is matched up to 1,500.
Right. So it requires, each of the at least 2 other clubs to invest collectively another $1,500 in order to get the full match. So the host club's match, or the sponsor club's match, is limited to 6,000, and then at least 2 other clubs have to invest at least $1,500 collectively to get the remaining match. And the minimum amount recognized is $500. So I'm just trying to get more participation. So shouldn't be too hard to achieve. So that's how you get the $7,500. And then for local global grants, an additional $2,000 of DDF may be available at the discretion of the district governor. It just depends on, what our balances are, but there's another $2,000 that might be available. Pedro.
Yes, no, I say the Governor Jane said that she will that she wanted to see if we can do some local global grants this year. So as I say before, I encourage people to look into that.
Absolutely. And given where we are in the process, we've had a lot of grant applications come through the last year, especially when we knew the funding models were changing. There was an incentive to get those applications in before the model changed. And so we've got a pretty big portfolio, and the number of draft grants being worked on right now is not big. And so the DDF pretty wide open at this time. We've got a pretty healthy balance, and there's absolutely an opportunity, lots of opportunity for clubs to come forward to get these district designated funds matching. The challenge, of course, is doing the front end of the project work, and doing that well and having partners and raising club cash funds. But we do have quite a bit of district designated funds available. I do just want to reinforce that the sponsor clubs have to meet the following criteria. They have to be supporting the Rotary Foundation financially. They have to file their district and global grant reports on time. We will not approve an application if a club is currently late on any reports, or they haven't set their goals for membership and foundation giving in Club Central, if they don't have a club foundation chair, if they don't have their qualification in place, their MOU, attended this seminar. Those things just absolutely have to be in place. And then we also, want to make sure that you're going to tell your story, that you're going to put your story out there and share it, because, so many good things happen when you do that. It always spurs other ideas, and other people get involved. So that's all important. I want to touch back to our policy a year ago, because I just want to make sure that people know about something. So last year we had to do an unusual district designated funds policy because of the funding model change that was announced in May of 2020. There was a window that the Rotary Foundation allowed. The World Fund had run out, and the Rotary Foundation allowed projects to be submitted under the old rules where club cash got matched on July 1st of the new year with new money coming in. So a year ago, July 1st, they allowed the old rules, projects to be submitted under the old rules with, club cash matching. And a lot of projects got put together in our district, or not put together, but completed applications completed in our district and around the world that were submitted in that window, that the Rotary Foundation then looked at with new money on July 1st of 2020, because that's when they got their next tranche of annual fund money to the World Fund, and approved those grants. And what that did was it brought our incoming DDF from our district down to only $17,000 available for the rest of the year, and for good reason. I mean, those projects, the economics were a lot better under those old rules, and it was just kind of a one-time thing. And we only had $17,000 available to support global grants with DDF all of last year. So we couldn't take our traditional approach. We actually had the policy ready to go that we're using this year of a match between 6,000 and 7,500 maximum. Well, if you only have 17,000 available, it's like, okay, the first two clubs that put in an application would wipe it out, and there'd be nothing left. And it was just a really, really tough situation. But yet we knew it was the right thing, for clubs to submit their applications for July 1st under the old rules, and that was fine. So we took an unusual approach, and we just allocated those $17,000 the same way that we allocate district grant funds every year, based on what the clubs had given to the Rotary Foundation annual fund 3 years prior. So it got divided up that way. And those allocations were communicated to the clubs, and they, would need to let us know when they were using them, and we've kept track of them. And originally they were going to expire at the end of last year, but there wasn't a lot of opportunity all the way around. So we said, okay, we'll let those allocations run through the end of this year, which would be June 30th of 2022. So those funds for the clubs that didn't use them are still available. And we just want to mention that those are out there, and that's where they came from. And we have a spreadsheet that keeps track of it. I know you can't easily read it on this screen, but it's line by line. Each club, this is only part of it. I guess it cut off the top. My screenshot didn't get all of it in, but it shows, what their global grant allocation was, how many dollars. If it's highlighted in green, that meant they used it, and I've got the project they used it on. And then over here on the far right, it's how much that is remaining. And we keep track of that, and we will at some point, just send a reminder out in some way that's not confusing to people in the clubs, the club president, that these funds are available still. So, Pedro, is there anything you want to say about that, or Bruce?
No, yeah, I mean, this is an updated copy of this is in the website. So if anybody wants to see it in more detail, they can either look at the website or let us know, and we will send you a copy.
Yeah. So we just want people to know that we're still keeping track of that, and those are available, and any that aren't used will just, the tags will go away, and they'll just be available as general DDF. And that total amount is a little over $10,000 right now. That's still tagged up. And again, the video box overlays here we go. The biggest ones are held by
I have a hard time
Joliet.
seeing that.
Yeah, Joliet has the biggest remaining, and we can't see the top of the screen or the top of the list, but Chicago have the biggest amounts.
Yeah, Chicago
that
uses most of it.
Yeah.
I think
So-
the only other thing, Rachel, that I'd say that right at the beginning, there was a little bit of confusion from several different clubs that these monies are meant for global projects.
Right.
It can only be used for global projects. People were trying to
That's correct.
take the money and transfer it to local district projects and
Uh-huh.
such. So these are specifically for global grants.
Even if we wanted to allow them to be transferred to district projects, it can't. It's not allowed by the foundation. These dollars aren't in our bank account. They exist up at the foundation, and they will only release them for global grants.
Right.
That's it. Yeah. So, okay, just wanted to make sure everybody knew we didn't forget about these dollars, and they're still out there. So here's an example of the global grant math. It's a $30,000 project, and the sponsor club is Joliet, and Chicago and Kankakee are also involved financially. And Joliet's putting in $6,000, and that is matched. Let's see here. I'm sorry, Joliet is putting in $15,000. I'm on the wrong column. And that is matched by the district, $6,000. That's our maximum match for one club. Chicago's putting in 1,000, and Kankakee's putting in 500. So those are each matched 100%. Up to the $7,500 maximum. And the World Fund matches the district designated funds 80%. So that produces another $6,000. And you add it all up and you get 30,000. It's just kind of a simple example of how that works. And I hope it illustrates the concept, but we'll just pause and see if there's any questions about that. Okay. We'll keep going here. Funds cannot be raised from beneficiaries or cooperating organizations in exchange for a grant. In other words, we're not going to be it's not going to be a pass through. An organization can't come along and say, oh, I want to tap into the Rotary process, and I will donate this, and I know all this matching comes out. It can't be. So the cooperating organization cannot, or the beneficiary cannot donate to the grant. That doesn't mean they can't donate to projects alongside the grant. They certainly can, and they often do. a lot of times when the global grant is going in, there's other work and things that are being done. And those beneficiaries or cooperating organizations, may be directly doing that. That happens on a number of projects. Funds cannot come from other grants, so we can't roll money from one grant into another. And the contributions are credited to the donor when they're routed through the Rotary Foundation. So when a project is approved and it's time to fund it, the cash donations can either go to the Rotary Foundation, and when they go to the Rotary Foundation, that donor is credited with that donation and also receives the Paul Harris Fellow recognition points, whether it's an individual or a club. Those points are awarded. And then there's also a contribution or a fee. There's a 5% fee, administrative fee on cash contributions that are made directly to the Rotary Foundation, and that's included in the grant module. You'll see it in there. Or the donation can be made directly to the grant bank account. We'll get into it in a few minutes, but there's always got to be a grant bank account for a global grant, a separate account. And those donations can be made to that account. But if they're not recognized by the Rotary Foundation, of course, because they didn't go to the foundation. And there's no Paul Harris Fellow points, but there's also no administrative fee. So it's really up to the donor to decide what works best for them. It's truly up to them to decide that. And we talked a bit earlier about the sustainability components. I don't know if there's anything we want to add to this at this point, but there's something called the 6 steps of sustainability, and that's built into the grant application, but it's also a standalone document that you can look at. And we think we've touched on all the aspects of that. And the training plan. So as Bruce was saying earlier, the Rotary wants the details of your training plan. They want to know what the training objectives are, the frequency of doing it, what the curriculum is, who the target audience is, and the trainer. And they have a form that you fill out to provide that information, and it gets attached to the grant application. In fact, there's the form. And it's actually really helpful because it helps you think through the process and make sure you have something really solid planned and in place before the grant application is submitted. And in fact, if you don't provide this, Rotary will ask you for it before they'll approve the project. I think I think we've all had a personal experience with that. And then if you have a cooperating organization involved in the project, and many projects do, there has to be a memorandum of understanding with the cooperating organization and the 2 sponsor clubs that goes through who the actual partners are and what it is that the cooperating organization will be doing. And this is it's a template, and it's available in the Grant Center, and the partners just fill it out with the actual information about their project. And there's a signature page, and everybody signs off on it, and it gets uploaded to the project as a file in the project application online. So we have measurement and evaluation. Pedro, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is the prior to giving you the approval. The Rotary Foundation goes to make sure that all these things are complete, and all the requirements are met. And sometimes the reviewers are kind of tough, but they want to see the outcomes are clear and they are measurable. So you got to be careful when you develop them, and don't put too many, because they are going to be evaluating you in too many things. That's part of the reason why I suggested that you go choose only one area of focus, because otherwise you have to develop these project outcomes for each of the areas of focus. So concentrating only one, so that this section will be a little simpler.
Yeah. Okay. exactly. I was just looking in the chat and there is a question from Rima on training. And she says, if it's medical equipment for a hospital, that is an updated version of what the doctors have already used. Do we still need to include the training plan? Just want to clarify. And yes, you do need to include that information, or at least reference to what that training plan is. That's critical.
One thing that might be helpful there is that to talk to the grant officer in Evanston and see for such specific equipment what kind of training they would require, you know, because I think it varies from the equipment to equipment. So they can tell you.
Yeah, and that's something we hadn't mentioned yet today, and we should, is, you know, connecting with the grant officer, you know, early in the process, letting them know you're working on the project, and just, you know, weighing in with them. Sometimes you'll want to consult with an area of focus manager as well. Rotary has area focus managers around all the areas of focus. So they might be a very important resource, you know, just depending on the technical aspects of the project as well. Okay, let's see here. And just a little bit more on measuring success. Really important to have baseline data. So that's something you'll be doing because you have to have something to compare to and setting benchmarks. Any reference information that you need so that you can show the impact of the project and that we made a difference. So once you have all that, you know, and you've think you have everything together, you completed all the sections of the application, you'll want to schedule a time to meet with the district grants committee. We do have to formally approve the project. So, you know, reach out to Pedro or any of the members to get on the schedule. And the information is on the district calendar about when we meet, and it is monthly. It tends to be the second Saturday for the most part. And we are meeting online, but we will need to review it. We'll want to review the application, the needs assessment, be able to ask questions. We want to review the funding, you know, make sure it fits the policy. Those are usually good sessions, real interactive, and we try to be helpful, but do not lock the grant application until after you've had the review with the district grant subcommittee, because there might be some things that you need to add or change, you know, after that, then you'd have to unlock it. But once our subcommittee approves, either primary contact can lock the grant application, and that starts the authorization process. So it has to be authorized by both primary contacts, by the club presidents of both clubs, by the district foundation chairs of both districts, and I think that by the district governors, as of course, as well. I'm trying to think of who else. And that's all part of the authorization process. And each of those individuals will automatically, once the grant is locked, emails are sent to each of those individuals that need to authorize, directing them to do so. But if you're the primary contact, you really want to monitor that. You don't know when somebody authorizes, you don't get a notification, but you can go back and you can log into the grant center and you can look at the grant and you can see the authorizations there, which ones have occurred and which ones haven't. And if there's any issues, you know, just really try to, you know, respectfully help those individuals through that process. If they've logged into make sure they log into My Rotary and they know how to navigate to the grant center and get it done.
One thing that's kind of important here is that you have the buy-in from the president and the president-elect.
Yeah.
Because sometimes during the approval process, the president changes, and then now the person that has to sign is the current president, who have been the president-elect the previous year. So we have had a couple of times in which the president-elect has taken time or refused to sign because they didn't understand the project and that had a delay. So
Absolutely. That is huge. Well, I think Harry McCabe, who I think is on here, can vouch for that. That affected the Downers Grove Club with a project they were trying to do in Kenya a little over a year ago. A wonderful project, and it just you know, the buy-in, the understanding wasn't there by the new club president, and it didn't happen. And we kept trying, and then eventually realized, you know, well, if the support isn't there, this isn't suitable. And you know, Harry and his club just reconnected with a club in Malawi that was interested and needed that type of a project in their community. Really started from scratch and built a great relationship, and happily just had their grant approved, I think last week or the week before. We've got a draft grant right now that's it's actually it's a Naperville Sunrise draft grant. Also heavily involved with the Rotary Club in Naperville in that. It's an environmental project, a plastic waste recycling project with a club in India. And they've been going through the authorization process. And there's only one more authorization needed, and it's the club president. And because the World Fund ran out in May and the project couldn't be, you know, submitted until the new road, well, it was submitted, but it couldn't be acted upon until the new Rotary year. Well, so it still needs to be authorized, and the current club president won't authorize it. The new president won't authorize it. And they're just going through a lot of turmoil right now. They've been trying to work with him and convince him to authorize it. And there's just some, whatever reasons, doesn't want to be involved in the project, and they might have to go back to square one and start over again with another club. So it's really, what you just said is so important. It's a continuum, you know, really making sure that that support for the project is there, not just with one person, but really with the entire leadership of the club. So this has been a real experience.
I know, painful too.
Yeah, but super important, super important. It's the real world. It does happen. Very, very important. So then after the approval, you get the primary contacts, or the grant team members of the sponsor clubs are notified that the grant is approved by the grant officer when it is approved. And then you have to go through the process to collect all the funds committed by other clubs. And we should take a moment to say this is an important process, collecting those funds. And so with that approval letter or email, there's information about what the clubs need to do to get the project funded. And all the information is in that email about how it can be, the money can be sent to the Rotary Foundation. You know, here's a link, or here's the form to fill out. The 5% needs to be added, or they can go to the grant bank account. However, it is the responsibility of the sponsor clubs to communicate that to the donors. The Rotary Foundation does not communicate to the other donors listed on your grant. They have no way of doing that. They know it might be this club or that club, but there's no contact that's provided. It's your responsibility. You must communicate to those donors in as specific and clear language as possible. Hey, our grant was approved, good news, because they don't even know your grant was approved. They don't get that information. Our grant was approved. You know, it might have been 6 or 9 months since they pledged. So they, you know, you got to tell them everything. Our grant was approved. You pledged this amount. And we need you to go ahead and, send your funds in. There are two choices, and you can actually cut and paste this from the email that you get from the Rotary Foundation. You can send it to the Rotary Foundation directly. Here's how you do it. Here's the amount, 5% added, and you fill out this form and send it in, put the grant number on it, or you can do it through, online, or you can send it directly to our Global Grant Bank account, and you have to decide where that Global Grant Bank account is. The Rotary Foundation changed its process, and they actually make you open up that grant account before the project is submitted. And it's a little controversial, because what if the project isn't approved and you've got a bank account open? But there was so much delay in the process right here where projects were approved, but there wasn't a bank account opened. And there was so much time lost that they've actually required you to do that in advance. And so you can tell your donor, here's the account number. This is where it is. Now, it may not be practical, if the bank accounts in Brazil, for them to send that money there, they're going to lose as much on wire transfers or, exchange rate as just paying the 5% to go to the Rotary Foundation directly. But you provide them that information and help them through the process. You must give them all the details. They don't necessarily remember what the pledges were, especially if they were made some time ago. And we see so much time lost right here when those communications aren't clear and they're not made in a timely fashion. And until all the funds are received, all the cash funds are received, the grant will not be funded. But once all the funds are received at the Rotary Foundation or the grant bank account, and you would just send the balance information to the payment. There's a payment specialist that'll work with you. They'll see all the funds there. Then the Rotary Foundation will send the World Fund money, the DDF, and the donations that have been sent to the Rotary Foundation to the grant bank account. But this is a really, really important part of the process. And, you really want to get those communications, out to your donors as clearly and as quickly as possible, and monitor. Someone was asking, recently, well, how do we know what's been received? How do we know? Well, obviously, in the grant bank account, you will know, either you or your partner club is monitoring that bank account, but you don't easily know what's been sent to the Rotary Foundation. And there's a report, a fairly new report that's been available for about 2 years through my Rotary under the Manage section on the homepage, and it's called Grant Detail. And actually anyone in Rotary can run this report and look at any grant details. And you just put the grant number in there and you page through it, and it will show you the donations that have been received. It doesn't update automatically. There might be a 1-week delay in funds coming in and them actually being reflected in the report. But just get in the habit, if you're a primary contact of a project that's been approved, of looking your project up online through the grant detail report. And you can always ask the payment officer, but try to do the self-help first and see what's there before you then go to the payment officer. It just helps to do that. So then you get funded, you implement the project, inform your partners regularly of the progress, and then there's reports to submit to Rotary. I just want to pause here and see if there's any questions about the immediate steps after approval. See if there's anything in the chat.
Yeah, John, Karen was asking about the bank accounts, and I was also going to respond to him by typing, but the Rotary Foundation recommends that the bank account be in the country where the project is going to be implemented, and sometimes that's a little bit of an issue with it takes time to set, but that's the way that they recommend, you know. So in extreme cases, they will allow it to be in the sponsor country, but the preference is to have it in the local where the implementation is going to happen.
Yeah. Right. And you really want to think through that, you know, even though the Rotary Foundation says you should do that, it just may not be the right or practical decision, especially if there's exchange rate exposure, you know, or the economy and the currency is unstable, or there's record keeping documentation issues. You know, it's really up to the clubs, and the foundation cannot force the decision on where the grant bank account is. So you want to make the wisest decision for your project. And John Kearns put a really interesting comment into the chat that I'm reading right now. That current grant project proposal should be part of the nominating committee process and selecting the club president-elect if possible. And you know, that's a really good comment. You know, every club has their own process for doing that. And in my involvement in my club, I can say that that's never been discussed, but yet it's an issue that gets run into. And I think that that's a really good thing to put out there, you know, because Rotary shouldn't be this, you know, 1 year show, and then there's somebody else's show, and then somebody else's show, and everything changes. The continuity is so critical and so important. So yeah, that's a really interesting and good comment. We'll keep going here. I know we're approaching 12 o'clock, and we're going to be done before that. We got a little bit of finishing up to do. So, you know, we're implementing the project, lots of communication, good financial management, record keeping. We're keeping records, we're putting them somewhere, we're following our plan, and we're not just keeping records by pieces of paper and, you know, a file in someone's house and only one person knows. No, we're, you know, you're putting them somewhere where everyone on the project team can see them and access them. You know, maybe you're in Dropbox together, maybe, you know, Google Docs, or, you know, something. There's a lot of different ways of doing that and making them accessible to everyone. So, you know, if something happens with one person, you know, the project isn't compromised. And as you're going through, you want to make sure, of course, that, you know, you're meeting the needs of the beneficiaries. You know, hopefully through the needs assessment, you got your beneficiaries directly involved in the process, and you're working, you know, with them all along the way, and in continuing to, you know, manage the funds and just, you know, work through the performance measures as well. You know, by doing the progress reports, you'll be, you know, knowing and measuring, you know, how things are going. So stewardship, we want to make sure that the Rotarians are actively involved in the project. You know, we're not stepping back and letting others, cooperating organizations or beneficiaries do all the implementation. You know, the Rotarians have to be involved, at least supervising that and keeping track of records and oversight of funds. And then there's the reports that are due. There's a progress. Okay, well, maybe we'll come back to the reports. Timely submission reports. So I'll talk about it now. And if there's another slide, we'll say we did it. But there's an annual progress report that's due. It's due, the due date is 12 months after the date the project is funded. That's when the first one is due. And they really do need to be submitted on time. And the primary contacts are notified by email 60 days. Automatically, they're notified by Rotary 60 days before the due date. So there's lots of time to work on them. And they follow a format very similar to the application itself. It's web-based, easy to fill in. Both primary contacts can go into it. It can be very collaborative doing that. And it's, you know, it is a good process. And then those get submitted. They have to be authorized by the club president. So both primary contacts And both club presidents have to authorize that. So it's real important to follow up with those club presidents and, make sure they're in the know and they know what's going on and they're authorizing those reports. And then a final report gets done within 2 months, I think, after the project is completed. So we want to do those. And a little bit more on the financial management. We might have touched on some of these things, but the bank account has to be a separate bank account. It cannot be commingled with other funds. You can't run your global grant through your club's bank account. You have to, that you're doing all your other business in, you have to establish a standalone bank account. A lot of treasurers don't like that. Like, well, what is that for? Why are we doing that? Why, it's extra, monitoring, but it's absolutely essential that it be a separate account. Use all the tools, Excel, to create a ledger, keep track of things, make sure we have copies of everything and scan it. And I touched on this earlier about document retention. It is required for a minimum of 5 years after the project is complete, but it could be longer depending on local law. So make sure you know the local law where the project is being done. And we like to have photos too. You can upload those to the grant reports, but also share them and share the stories in Rotary Showcase. In fact, while you're doing the project, you can put information into Rotary Showcase. You can, in fact, while you're trying to find partners for your project, you can put it in Rotary Showcase and attract people. And as you're going along, really update that information. So this is what we just said about the progress reports and when they're due. And they're quite important. And 4 times a year, the Stewardship Department of the Rotary Foundation checks the timeliness of progress reports in each district. And in fact, we just had that review. They do it in October, they do it in April, they do it in January, and they do it in July. And they check. And if if less than 70% of our open grants don't have on time, are not on time with their progress reports, we can be suspended as a district from doing global grants. So we have to have at least 70% of an on-time reporting when they spot check it. And so we came real close on that this month. We were at 71%. We got close. To the bottom. Pedro, you want to say anything about that? We're not talking about any particular clubs, but in general, what
in general, every month we go over that, and it's one of the things that we do religiously every month to see which reports are coming due and follow up until they get done. So it's very important to get it. Especially we have close to 20 grants that got to submit reports. So it's a continuous challenge to make sure that they get done.
Yeah, and so it is critical, and being late actually affects the district as a whole, or it can. And I know there were years ago, past district governor Chris Riley had told me, I don't know whether he was foundation chair or what his role was, he said, but the district actually got suspended under the matching grants program. Yeah, because of lateness. And he said it took quite some work to get reinstated. So we never want to take this lightly, and it is our responsibility. We're taking funds. We need to follow the stewardship requirements. So if at the end of the project you have any unused grant funds, there's some information you need to know about that. So any unused grant funds could be used for additional expenses on the project. They have to be eligible, they have to fit the project scope, and the foundation has to approve it in advance. So, maybe you have a couple $1,000s left and you see how it, for a number of reasons, things cost less than budget or such. And you see how it could fit in and it would, fits the scope of the project. please consult with the grant officer first and, get that approved. They almost always say yes. And then you can spend those monies. But even if after that, you still have funds that are remaining, if it's more than $1,000, it has to be returned to the Rotary Foundation, and they'll provide you the information on sending those funds back. But if it's less than $1,000, you just keep it. It gets kept, and you're supposed to then, use it for something that complements the grant itself. So, and it's up to the clubs to do that. And when the funds are returned to the Rotary Foundation, they'll be credited to the World Fund, except there might be some countries that don't allow that. There's special rules around India and the Philippines in particular. So, just to wrap up, successful grant projects, they met community needs, they have measurable outcomes, so we know that we made an impact, we made a difference, and it's long-term sustainable. There was a plan, you got there because you had a plan and you're following the plan, and we've maintained stewardship of our funds. We've been financially responsible along the way. Those are the key elements of a successful grant project. And these are just some things to point out because these are issues that have come up. If a grant application has been opened up, but it hasn't been submitted within 12 months, the Rotary Foundation will go in and they'll cancel it. They'll send an email first to the primary contacts, just saying, hey, are you working on this? And if we don't hear from you in 30 days, we're gonna cancel it. They just need to do that because the system just gets cluttered with grant applications that get opened and abandoned, and it just it's a data nightmare. So they do this. If the grant applications aren't completed and approved within 6 months of the submission, they can cancel the application. In other words, the project has been submitted and you're going back and forth with the Rotary Foundation, and 6 months goes by and you haven't responded to them. I mean, if there's an active dialogue going on, nothing will be canceled. But if they've asked you questions and you don't respond for 6 months, again, you'll get a warning. And if there's no response, they can cancel it. So you need to be attentive. And if the payment requirements aren't met within 6 months of approval, so your grant's been approved, but you don't get the funding completed, that process just goes sideways, they can cancel the grant. So we just incentives, again, no, it won't happen without warning or just a chance to, say, hey, we're working through this, but they just, want to make sure people aren't abandoning these projects and not paying attention to it because it has happened. So, and then if the project is approved and funded and nothing happens within 12 months, like the project just, there it is and nobody's doing anything, they can ask for it to all be returned. So pretty straightforward. Grant ineligibility, we just want to touch on that. Why a grant might be considered ineligible and doesn't meet the criteria. So if you've submitted a grant application or you're talking to the grant officer, you haven't submitted it yet, but you're talking to them and they say, well, it's not eligible. They'll give you feedback or changes that you might need to make to become eligible. And they're really following the area focused policy statements. That's really the roadmap to what's eligible and what's not eligible. And we've seen this happen with a number of clubs. I don't know if Charles Ezel is on the webinar right now. Charles is with Brookfield Riverside, and he submitted a wonderful project application a number of years ago for a clinic in a remote area in Mexico. And just the way the project was originally structured, because it had some telecommunication component to it, it had health facilities component to it, and I think it had a clean water component. And just the way it was assembled, they came back and they just said, well, it's not eligible. It's not, it's like 3 different projects. And Charles and myself and some others from his grant team and Chris Garib, who was on our committee at the time, we sat down together and we said, well, just tell us the story. And he did. And we said, well, this really is one cohesive project and we just need to look at, what the objective is. And these are the things that help us meet that objective and just, refocus, how it's written. And they did. And it was implemented, it was approved and it was implemented. Just a wonderfully important project in a rural community that just didn't have these facilities. And when people had a health issue, really at almost any level, it was a medical crisis for them because there just wasn't anything available. And so they will help you through that process for the most part. But here's the reason that most the most frequent reasons that the grants are denied. It just doesn't fit the areas of focus. It might be, something that just doesn't fit in, like if it's, for example, something related to philanthropy around animals, but doesn't fit into community economic development. That's just not something the Rotary Foundation does. It's near and dear to my heart, but it's not Rotary Foundation. It's not sustainable. It's a wonderful idea. It's a great thing. It achieves a benefit, but it's not sustainable. Well, global grants are about sustainability, so it wouldn't be eligible. It benefits another organization's program. It's really just a pass-through to build up another organization programming. You've hit your limit of 10 open global grants. You can't do any more. Or the partner club is not current on reporting. So if you submit a grant application and either club is not current on reporting, it will not be approved. So that's and that makes a lot of sense. So there's a lot of resources that are available. Certainly in my Rotary in the Grant Center, all these documents and things we've talked about are available there and downloadable on links. There's the Guide to Global Grants document, very helpful. There's learnings in the online learning center. There's courses you can do on doing grants and running grants. The grant staff itself. There's a quarterly e-newsletter called Rotary Giving and Grants, and you can subscribe to that or other newsletters through your My Rotary profile. You can do that. Our subcommittee chair, Pedro, the grants, the global grant coordinators, coordinator Bruce George, just a lot of folks around the district. People who've been working on grants are a wonderful resource as well. And let's see, what else is here. This was the grant management, the grant detail report that I referred to earlier, that anyone can access online. And I know it's really small here, but all those little numbers that you see over here, these are donations. This was the iPads project, so there's a lot of donors. And this was just a snapshot at a point in time of the donations that have come in. And you can use that if you're, the primary contact or the sponsor club to just monitor what's actually being sent into the Rotary Foundation versus the grant bank account. And just remember, there's a little bit of a lag, but it is a helpful, really helpful tool. And it's only been around for about 2 years. The only other way we knew before was by constantly asking the payment officer what they've received. And that's not a very good process for anybody to keep asking one individual who's handling many, many grants. So those are our, that is the bulk of our program today. And we'll just pause and take questions. Pedro, if you want to, if there's anything you see in the chat.
There's nothing. No, it's just a bunch of people saying thank you for the presentation. Good job, Rachel.
Well, thank you. Oh, there's our thank you. And that's some of the grant teams that have been doing projects in Honduras at the Simple Schools. Got Florence Forche from LaGrange, Scott Eggerding from LaGrange, right? And Chuck
Mhm.
Newman and Roger Iliff from Naperville, and not present in the picture, but was there on the trip was Chris Garrett from
He took the picture.
Darien. So, yeah. So I'm just going to copy the chat here, save the chat. We thank you for being with us today. I am going to stop recording.